There is a dam in northern Italy that still stands today, perfectly intact, structurally flawless, open to visitors on guided tours, and it has not held a single drop of water in over 60 years, because the night it was supposed to prove itself, nearly 2,000 people died in the valley below it, and the dam itself never broke at all. That is not a riddle. That is a catastrophe that was measured, documented, warned about in writing, and allowed to happen anyway. And understanding exactly how that was possible is the reason this story still matters today. Welcome back to Dark Ledger. To understand what was destroyed on the night of October the 9th, 1963, you first need to understand what post-war Italy was desperately trying to build. The Second World War had left the country economically gutted, its cities scarred, its infrastructure fractured beyond what most Europeans had experienced, and in the years that followed, Italy entered what historians would later call the miracolo economico, the Italian economic miracle, a period of reconstruction so rapid and so ambitious that it reshaped the entire character of the nation within a single generation. Factories reopened, roads expanded, electricity, once a luxury rationed through poverty and war, became the engine of everything: industrial production, domestic comfort, economic identity. And Italy needed far more of it than it had. Hydroelectric power became the answer. Italy's mountainous terrain, its narrow alpine gorges, its powerful rivers descending from the Dolomites and the southern Alps, all of it represented an almost perfect natural infrastructure for dam construction. And one private company moved faster than any other to exploit it. Società Adriatica di Elettricità, known as SAD, specialized in harnessing alpine rivers, and its chief hydraulic engineer, Carlo Semenza, carried an ambition that went well beyond corporate targets. Semenza wanted to build the tallest arch dam in the world, and he spent years systematically searching Italy's alpine valleys for the geological conditions that would make that possible. An arch dam works on a principle of transferred force rather than brute mass. Where a gravity dam resists water pressure through sheer weight, sometimes hundreds of thousands of tons of concrete pressing downward into bedrock. An arch dam curves upstream and redirects that pressure sideways into the canyon walls themselves, using the landscape as a structural partner. This makes arch dams dramatically taller and leaner than their gravity counterparts, but it demands one non-negotiable condition. The canyon walls, the abutments, must be composed of rock strong enough to absorb the lateral thrust of an entire reservoir pressing against them every single day, without exception. When Semenza and his survey teams arrived at the Vajont Valley in the Dolomites, with its near-vertical limestone walls and its exceptional gorge geometry, every geological assessment they conducted told them they had found exactly what they were looking for. Construction began in 1957, and by 1960, the Vajont Dam rose to 261.6 meters above the valley floor, making it one of the tallest dams ever constructed in recorded engineering history. Newspapers celebrated it. Politicians stood beneath it for photographs. Engineers from across Europe studied its design as a benchmark for what human ambition could achieve in difficult terrain. But the mountain standing directly beside that reservoir, the mountain whose geology would determine whether any of it survived, had a name that the local population had been quietly using for generations before a single engineer arrived. They called it Monte Toc, and in the regional dialect of that valley, Toc has been interpreted to mean rotten, though some linguistic sources translate it simply as piece or chunk, a name the locals associated with the mountain's known instability. The locals were not speaking metaphorically. For generations, residents living on and around Monte Toc had observed the mountain behaving in ways that solid ground simply does not behave. After heavy rainfall, cracks would open slowly across farmland. Stone walls built by their grandparents would shift out of alignment by inches over a single winter. Trees that had grown vertically for decades would begin leaning at angles that had no explanation. Small landslides were common enough that they registered not as emergencies, but as a known condition of living beside that particular slope. Sadi engineers were aware of the regional landslide history. They classified it as typical alpine terrain instability, manageable, localized, not a systemic threat to a structure of this engineering caliber. That classification, as the Italian National Research Council's subsequent investigation would confirm in exhaustive technical detail, was catastrophically wrong. Beneath Monte Toc's limestone surface, the geology was constructed like a mechanism designed to fail under exactly the conditions Sadi was about to create. The mountain's upper mass rested not on solid bedrock, but on weaker, clay-rich sedimentary layers known as marl. And these clay beds formed what geologists identify as a dip slope configuration. Planes running parallel to the mountain's surface, angling directly downward toward the valley floor below. In dry conditions, those clay layers could support the weight of the mountain above them without difficulty. But water changes everything in geology, because as water infiltrates clay-rich rock under pressure, it generates what engineers call pore water pressure, a hydraulic force trapped between the rock strata that pushes outward, reduces internal friction, and transforms a stable geological formation into something far more dangerous. And Sadi was about to fill a reservoir covering hundreds of hectares directly against the base of that mountain. It was Carlo Semenza's own son, Eduardo Semenza, a geologist who worked extensively on the site's geology, who identified what the monitoring instruments were actually measuring. After mapping the curved morphology of Monte Toc's slope, and analyzing the disrupted bedding patterns deep within the rock, Eduardo concluded in his internal report that the mountain was not an intact geological formation at all. It was the remnant of a prehistoric mega landslide, a scar from a catastrophic collapse that had already happened once, thousands of years earlier. And the progressive filling of the Vajont reservoir risked reactivating that entire dormant mass as a single coherent unit. He submitted these findings to SADE management directly. The findings were received, logged, and the project continued. The engineering response to the mounting evidence was to manage the reservoir level, raising and lowering the water on a controlled cycle, with the belief that modulating hydraulic load would modulate the mountain's behavior. And for a period, the data appeared to support that logic. When reservoir levels dropped, displacement rates on Monte Toc slowed measurably. When levels rose, movement accelerated in direct correlation. The system appeared responsive and therefore controllable, and that appearance of control became the most dangerous assumption in the entire history of the project. What the engineers were not accounting for, and what the criminal proceedings against Sadi officials before the Italian courts in 1968 would later establish beyond legal doubt, was that deep within Monte Toc's clay layers, pore water pressure dissipated far more slowly than surface reservoir levels changed. Each fill and drain cycle was not resetting the mountain's internal stability. It was degrading the friction along the hidden slip planes incrementally, permanently. with each repetition bringing the entire mass closer to a threshold from which no engineering intervention could retrieve it. By the autumn of 1963, monitoring data had begun showing something that left no room for ambiguous interpretation. An estimated 260 million cubic meters of mountain, a geological mass roughly equivalent in weight to approximately 2,000 Empire State Buildings. At 22 hours and 39 minutes on October the 9th, 1963, Montauk released its entire mass into the Vajont reservoir in approximately 45 seconds. 260 million cubic meters of rock struck the water's surface at a velocity of approximately 30 meters per second, around 108 kilometers per hour, a collision registering on seismograph stations across multiple countries simultaneously. The reservoir did not produce a wave. It produced a wall of displaced water measuring an estimated 250 meters in height, which crested over the dam's 261-meter structure and descended into the Piave Valley below, carrying between 25 and 50 million cubic meters of water and debris.